to the news. The news update. Interim government or permanent revolution by Omole Ibukun. Thank you for tuning in to the news. Please don't forget that you can subscribe to this channel by clicking on the subscribe button and the bell for more updates. Now to the news details. Please listen carefully. Earlier this week, I watched with concern the video of protesters in Abuja demanding that they want an interim government in place of the recent presidential election results. This is a reaction to the recent election of Tinubu as the president-elect of Nigeria, and this is their recommended alternative line of action since they want the presidential election cancelled and Tinubu's swearing-in stopped. Why their anger is valid? I think the demand is not only wrong, but also very selfish. But I think this selfishness can be caused by some ignorance of history. This demand is selfish and hypocritical because this protest is coming from the same Peter Obi camp that kept telling everyone to not protest the cash scarcity before the elections because it felt the policy will boost its chances despite the fact that the policy was killing Nigerians. Peter Obi also feared protests because he thought they could mean disruption of the election and imposition of an undemocratic interim government, none of which happened then when people still went ahead to protest across the country. Yet, the same Peter Obi political camp is presently embarking on protests demanding an interim government. What better way to describe this than hypocrisy? But it is not new. The Nigerian political elite has always been hypocritical. The same Tinubu who wrote on sentiments of being an opposition to the cash scarcity policy, even though he was an opposition for selfish reasons, is now the same president-elect who has gone very silent about the policy despite the continued scarcity of cash even after the election. The Nigerian political elite only cares about their own interests and will use any means necessary to maintain their grip on power. This is why they are quick to suppress protests when it threatens their interests, but are willing to protest when it serves their interests. From Atiku to Obi and Tinubu, there is a shared history of suppressing protests, but every one of them has become a protester at one point or the other in this race to become the next president. This is why no serious opposition to APC can come from either Atiku's PDP or Peter Obi's LP. What Nigeria really needs is a genuine opposition that is not beholden to the political elite. The Peter Obi camp has shown that they are not interested in opposing the ruling party APC, but rather in taking their place. They would support APC's policies as they did on cash scarcity and subscribe to APC ideologies. It was Peter Obi who claimed that it does not have any ideological differences with Atiku. This is not true opposition. That's just a power struggle between the different factions of the ruling class. And it is necessary for us to remember to not die in their war. This is why Nigeria is presently in need of radical political change more than ever before. Nigeria needs radical political change that prioritizes the interests of the masses over that of the ruling elites, not a change that seeks to preserve a faction of the ruling elites. Peter Obi is not only a capitalist billionaire. He had one of the generals who led #EndSARS denier in his campaign team until outrage made him drop general energy. He also had political thieves like Okupe leading his campaign up to some point. The change of Peter Obi is only to preserve a side of the ruling elite and uphold the current political system, which is designed to benefit the few at the expense of the country, at the expense of the many. This is where a radical overhaul of the system becomes necessary to ensure that the people of Nigeria have a real say in their governance. This is where the demand for an interim government becomes a threat to the democratic process and the democratic interests of the Nigerian masses. This is not to say that the election results should be respected and any opposition should go to court. This is to say that the grievances can only be addressed with a revolution and not any legislative means, like a court judgment or interim government. Also, allowing a group of people to impose an interim government undermines the democratic process we are protesting about and sets a dangerous precedent for future electoral efforts. Now, according to the writer Omole Ibukun, who asked a question that is it interim government we want a permanent revolution? We want a permanent revolution, whereas we have a new Nigeria. And those demanding for interim government are doing that just for their own sake, not just that they are in the interest of the people. But remember that after the election, different protest has been coming up, and the Labour Party presidential candidate who told the obedient not to protest, they are the one now protesting in different states. We need a permanent revolution. That is the solution to all this. That's why we need to build a new system with a permanent revolt. What's your view to this case, to this story? Kindly share your comments in the comment section. Thank you.